Though it may not always seem like it, the impetus, the motivation for every sizable creative endeavor I've ever completed has been to improve. A not entirely insignificant percentage of my motive has been to merely complete a project, be it a mod or an article or a video such as this. The knowledge that the finished product I am working towards will justify its own existence based on its own merits that I impart into it during that project's development. An at times veritable, though now vanishingly small component of my motivation has been driven by my ego, my desire to see my name next to the finished product, and less significantly, to see my name or my project discussed or interpreted or otherwise engaged with by an audience. But the primary motivator for all my completed, significant content has been, and I believe always will be, that I see the project as a path to improve my own skill set. This is especially true of projects that are still ongoing, after years of development, where in theory my interest would have or should have waned. And yet it instead regularly spikes as we get closer to a potential release. And crucially, as I learn more skills that I discover are either paramount to that project's completion, or in some way unlock a more efficient development cycle for that project and for all projects that follow. This has been my journey, as I have learned to become a consistent force in my role as a content developer. And it is a journey I have seen mirrored in the true greats of other spaces, people who have achieved far more than I have or maybe ever will. This, in my estimation, makes the essence of my journey universal. A set of principles that dictate how successful, how efficient, how productive, and how satisfied you are, could be, and will be. This is by design. Consistency is consistently the toughest nut to crack. It is something you can't half-ass, and something you work on every time you work on anything else. Consistency is the repetitive practice drills of macro cycles on an empty StarCraft map, or of free throws on a basketball court. In addition to that, consistency is the cornerstone of your ability to improve your understanding of the fundamentals, and the foundation of your ability to learn and conceptualize new skills and techniques. In this way, consistency is also practicing on a different kind of tennis court, or mastering a new Counter-Strike map. Without consistency, skills that were once familiar will atrophy, and new skills you wish to learn will simply never stick. Consistency is your very ability to learn and to refine and to improve. Anything you do not do consistently is not something that will lead to self-improvement, and in the context of production, is not worth doing at all. Consistency is an endless walk through an infinite forest, not a quick sprint to a nearby finish line. You'll find many places to rest and to celebrate your accomplishments on your journey through the woods, but you'll never come close to the end of the canopy. There will always be a few more trees you can see in the distance, just as there will always be a few more projects you want to develop. Mindfulness is avoiding burnout through furthering your understanding of your body and your mind. Consider your earthly desires of diet and exercise, your physical limitations with regards to your work, and your mental aptitude for working for long periods of time or with unfamiliar skills or concepts. Mindfulness provides you with an introspection needed to understand when you are not working with purpose, and it begets an understanding of possible solutions to any problem. Take care of your meat vehicle. Take care of your brain in a jar. For what allows you to remain consistent in your journey is, and of itself, a measure of your discipline, your ability to force yourself to sleep at a regular time, regardless of how excited you are to make progress on your latest project, and to force yourself to awake 8 hours later, even if it doesn't feel like you had enough sleep. You will find that the more you cultivate your lifestyle to improve your sleep and your diet and your physical activity, the more energy and drive you will have to expand on your projects, and the better your existence will be on the more mundane, day-to-day level. It is the nature of being human that you will stumble and sometimes even outright fail. But without hardship, there can be no growth. And even at your peak level, you will still be competing against yourself, against the person you could be if you tried just a little harder or dug deeper into a mysterious limitation and find out how to unlock even more greatness. Hand in hand with being mindful of your limits is acknowledging what you can do, and will allow you to be firm but fair when negotiating with yourself. Understand which excuses are legitimate and which are manifestations of weakness, and understand which failures offer up a lesson and which are best owned and discarded. This is the pivotal counterpoint to the argument that improving at a craft does not improve yourself as a human. These things are one and the same, and the more disciplined you become in one area, the harder it will become to be undisciplined in another. By the same token, the longer you remain wrong, the harder it becomes to be right. When Thorin, esports historian and interviewer extraordinaire, invited Ramsey Dukes on his side channel for a second appearance, a particularly poignant anecdote that Ramsey shared illustrated a brilliant way to circumvent the short-sighted and in some ways tribal nature of the human mind, and learn important lessons as a result. The quote isn't verbatim. I've linked the interview in the description with a timestamp for reference. But the gist of it was that if a staunch capitalist was confronted with a community of aloof hippie types and was convinced that they were wrong or even malicious in their conduct in the world, the best thing he could do in that situation would be to join them for a short time to study their behavior and take part in their activities. Either this man will find he is wrong and will become wiser for the experience, or he will find he was correct and will be able to draw upon the events to back up his convictions. Likewise, should you ever be confronted with the prospect of learning a skill that seems out of your reach, the most useful thing for you to do is to try to learn that skill, and not just once, but several times, with many approaches, until either you find a method that sticks, or you make the determination that such a skill cannot exist within your wheelhouse, in which case there will never be any sense of regret or missed opportunity. The subtle but pervasive sense of doubt that you might have been able to learn had you tried a little harder is a perpetual what-if question that can only be answered by taking an approach like this. By the same logic, should you think that any idea or principle within this video isn't all it's cracked up to be, but don't have the first-hand experience necessary to properly argue your position, that is a perfectly logical reason to explore these concepts in your own life and see what you can accomplish with them. Either you'll find yourself to be a very unlikely exception for which these rules do not apply, or you'll surprise yourself with how far you go on your own journey. Decisiveness is another principle I have put to great use. Decisiveness keeps you focused, and coupled with the mindfulness to know which habits or thoughts or even individuals are providing a net negative to your life, and the consistency to apply this lens to all of your experience, decisiveness will allow you to separate the wheat from the chaff, the positive from the negative, and cut out any aspect of your life that does not pull its own weight. Uninstall social media from your phone, or relegate checking it to specific times of the day. Sign out of instant messengers or set them to do not disturb while you're working. Do anything necessary to minimize distractions and maximize not only your own productivity, but the amount of positive leisure time you have that isn't spent scouring the internet for humor or whatever it is that you do that rarely provides you with a satisfying experience. Never suffer fools who shy away from these principles for the wrong reasons. Be open and eager to share your experiences and your wisdom, but when you receive responses like, "That's too hard," or "I can't do that," you should interpret that as the admission of weakness that it is. Barring obvious physical and neurological shortcomings, anyone can learn to do anything, given enough time and drive. So when you meet people who speak as if they desire to learn, but dismiss these principles on the basis of their own cowardice, or otherwise waste both your time and their own with their self-fulfilling prophecies of mediocrity, understand that you have led that horse to water and simply can't make it drink. And at the other end of the spectrum, remember that you are constantly in search of greatness in the form of other people. That's why you are exploring these principles and applying them to your own life. You are seeking competence. Find exceptional talents and work to demystify their success. Understand their strengths and weaknesses, their imbalances and their boons. Seek out interviews involving people you admire. Find any scrap you can use to reverse engineer their process from their product. And when you do strike up conversations with others on the subject of self-improvement, see what their experience has been like in this regard. Try to learn from their mistakes and share yours with them in the hopes of providing value in exchange for what they gave to you. This principle extends well beyond the remit of individuals. Take notes when something inspires you, either as a fan or as a critic. Analyze and understand when an act or hobby benefits you and when it leaves you poorer. Critically assess as many of your actions as possible. Justify, accurately and honestly, everything you can. Consider whether the act will enrich your life, or release psychic pressure, or indeed be productive. When you can maximize how beneficial your every action is, you will be well and truly on a path towards discipline and consistency. Lastly, this message is for everyone, but especially those that do not respond well to flowery language and seemingly self-important messages from people on YouTube. During our very short life, we have been bestowed with the opportunity to enrich our experience and the experiences of others. Those of us driven towards content creation have the potential to pass on the very notions I hope I've inspired in you. That discipline will unlock countless doors, that critical thinking will shine a spotlight on the best doors for you, and that firm convictions with an open mind will help you to lead others to find their way through their own doors. The gift of consciousness comes with a responsibility to use that tool to improve each other's lives, and the greatest way to do that as a creative in any field is by being disciplined in your process and by being honest in your life.